The story most partners tell themselves is that growth means hiring full-time staff on your payroll, carrying all the risk. There's a Salesforce delivery business running on 600 certified engineers, almost none of them on the payroll. You'll hear how Jim Marascio does it and how you can tap into the same bench. Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to my podcast. In this episode, I talked to Jim from Equal 11, and that's equals with two ones. All the links will be in the show notes. You'll learn how he built Salesforce delivery capacity across 3 continents using a network of certified engineers instead of full-time hires, how he decides where to source talent and where he leads with outcomes over cost, and how other SIs like you can add a vetted niche engineer in days without building an offshore team on their own. Jim spent 25 years as a chief delivery officer, a CTO, and a CIO before founding Equals 11, a certified Salesforce partner running on 600 plus engineers across Charlotte, the Bay Area, and Lima. And also, I've got to add Europe in there as well. Now over to Jim from equals11.com. Jim, great to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. Look, I know we've had some great conversations, but it's time now to share those with you who are listening from wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is. Why don't we kick off with, who you love to serve as clients?
Sure, Paul. So our client is typically the mid-market space to small enterprise. So in the United States, for us, that's probably 75 million to a few $1 billion in annual revenue. But because we play specifically in the Salesforce space, we're more interested in headcount because that typically translates into how many Salesforce users you have. So a couple hundred employees to several thousand employees.
Gotcha. And does it change significantly between, say, 100 and 1,000 people when you're doing post-implementation, or is it, pretty similar?
I would say generally it's pretty similar, and that's why we kind of started at that space. If you get below a couple hundred employees, it gets very different. If you get above a few thousand, the scale can get very different. And candidly, who we're competing with gets really different, especially on the higher end.
Yeah, great. And I think, you will go into more detail, but I think about 80% is direct clients, but you also
Yep.
support some SIs as well.
Yeah. It's different for most Salesforce SIs. We actually have a couple SI clients that are leveraging us to get a global talent pool, is kind of the short version of
Yeah.
it. We can certainly dive more into that.
Yeah, we definitely will because I know you'll be interested in this, especially if you're in the owner of the business and you're doing too much delivery. This is
Yeah.
definitely going to help you. As far as the problems that you tend to solve, what are they for, in particular, this mid-market?
Sure. So that's really been evolving for us. And part of that's just our natural stage of evolution after a few years. And then part of it is driven by what Salesforce is doing. And there's been a huge pivot in the last 12 to 24 months with Salesforce going all in AI and Agentforce. And more recently, just in the last few months, you may be hearing about headless and Slack too, really, since last November. Salesforce is evolving rapidly, and in order for us to keep up with the market, both what our clients can do, but also us trying to scale and grow, has forced us to evolve there. So the story is really changing to be heavily AI, heavily around automation. But for us, it's also had us lean more into strategy, which I love.
Yes.
The beginning of the business, we tended to be a little more tactical, more engineering focus, waiting for the client to define the problem that we were going to solve, and then us to come in and help solve it. Where we found an ability to kind of move up the value chain has been helping the client understand that maybe what they're experiencing here isn't the problem. What the problem is here, and here's what the opportunities are that we can help them solve. So by becoming more consultative, it is increasing the value we have to our clients, and it's creating more interesting work for our engineers. So it's been a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, and briefly, we spoke before we went to air that I'm doing a renovation at the moment, and I
Yeah.
went to buy some appliances yesterday, and sort of went to three different people, all sort of experts in their field, and I collected all that information, and of course, put it in my AI. But one of them said, "Oh, a kitchen designer will, hope they're not replaced by AI," and I said, "Well, I don't think they will because everyone's." Unique point of difference isn't shared on the web, right? It's
Sure.
not as if every day you're saying, "Hey, I really learnt this brilliant thing and I'm going to go share it so everyone has it." No, you sort of keep that. And sometimes you don't know what you know. You'll see
Yeah.
patterns that, the human, that's why humans are so distinct to anyone else. And I think that's, you're evolving to strategy is what's happening to everyone. That, all the mundane stuff's getting done by AI, which is great, but still that creative thinking, that the pattern matching, all
Yeah.
of that is with you. And are you experiencing the same thing?
Yeah, I like how you said you don't know what you know. I think conversely, very often we don't know what we don't know too. And so our job very often is to help the clients understand what they don't know. And so they can come to us with a challenging experience, and we say, okay, we can solve it this way or that way or this way. And the more we understand about their business, about their different business processes, about how data flows through the organization, about the different silos of data across the organization, and where potentially Salesforce is either already connected with or could be interfaced with and integrated with. That's where it presents opportunities for us to create significant value to them by saying, hey, what if? And the more what if conversations we're able to have, the more value I think we're able to provide, but also the stickier ultimately we get with our clients because we become a trusted advisor, not just a tactical delivery partner that or delivery vendor. I mean, I hate the word vendor, but for us, we want to be partners. And if we can work toward being truly a partner, then there's more value in as an advisor.
Yeah, well, you didn't, start equals 11 first. It's been the end of your journey. I know you spent a lot of time, as a CIO, a CTO, on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
What has that provided you that some people miss?
Yeah, a lot of scars and a lot of lessons. So I like to say the gray hair comes with experience, which comes with learning. It's like that old saying, how do you gain wisdom through experience? How do you gain experience through bad decisions? And so I've made some good decisions and some bad decisions through my career and learned from both sides. And it's always good to learn from other people's bad decisions too. So I try to pay attention to those as well. But as a former CIO, as a former CTO of a couple different SaaS companies, I've learned how to manage and how to recruit and how to assemble teams first and foremost. Going back to the late 1990s, I started managing distributed teams first here in the United States, across multiple time zones in the United States, and by 2002, I had my first team in Latin America, and so learned through that, and then ultimately teams in India, like every American company does eventually, and throughout Europe, throughout Latin America, and so we learned about how to manage people across different cultures, across different time zones. And the reality is, I like to say that there's smart people everywhere. And if we can build the right team of the right smart people that have the right motivations and align them on a common goal, and that's what I learned over 25 years of being a CIO and a CTO, then we can deliver whatever solution for anybody. And so for the last several years with Equals 11, we've been focused on being that partner. I didn't say it earlier, but the name Equals 11 comes from the belief that 1 + 1 can equal 11. When two companies or two individuals collaborate together on something, they can achieve more collectively than they could independently. So we try to be that partner to our clients and to take that experience that I've got from 25 plus years of doing this to leverage that for everybody's good.
Yeah, and look, for me, I worked in the Coke company, so that, it was always you're gaining
Yeah.
from multiple countries. It's a true global company. We had the saying, think global, act local. And, I've had teams in the Philippines. I've got people in India. I've got teams in South America, like you said. I've now got some teams in Africa. So, I'm sort of, very much like you, always been a global person. And I think the number one thing for me around the culture is just what do you do when you're not in work, right? I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest fundamentals. Like, some people in some countries, like they really have to look after their family a lot more than what others do.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
there's different reasons. And I think, personally, I think some of the countries where that is prominent, that they're more loyal, they're harder working because they really have got more than themselves to think about. Whereas I find that that's not often the case in some of
Yeah.
our Western societies because, you got the opportunity, you've got more opportunity than you ever wanted. So I think that's been some of the biggest cultural things that I've learned. What have been some of the ones for you?
Sure. So I think, and I've had a delivery team in a prior life in Melbourne, Australia, where you are,
Yes.
and I've had teams all over the world. What I think for an American company, we're a little spoiled here. And so there's a huge talent pool. Anywhere else, we'd be a bunch of different countries, anywhere else in the world. And so a lot of American companies have less global experience
Yes.
and less comfort leaving our borders. They might be okay going across the United States, but as soon as they cross the border, even into Canada, which is America light, it becomes uncomfortable for them. And so taking the time to understand the people, understand what the mission is that they're trying to do, understand the different cultural differences. And for me, travel's part of that. It's important for me, even though we have a team all over Latin America, we've got a team across the United States, and we've got a team throughout Europe. It's important for me, at least annually, to get to all those places and see most of our team members because the FaceTime, even though we work together every week, every day, sometimes virtually, the time that you get to break bread together, the time that you learn about their families and what motivates them and what they do when they're not working, that just doesn't come up. It's the stuff that happens in between the meetings when you're in the car or you're sitting at the dinner table or having coffee or whatever. The investing in those types of relationships helps to solidify a team. And for me, having a distributed team around the globe, you still have to have a little bit of that face time.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I agree. And one of the reasons I sold my outsourcing business is because I was no longer allowed to travel to Asia because of my condition.
Sure.
And I felt if I can't be there, well, that's you're going to
Yeah.
miss that element. So I think that's so true. And for you, like you said, you've got people in onshore in America, you've
Yeah.
got LATAM, you've got Europe, and you've got some partners that sort of provide that. What are the key differences, and how do you make a decision as to which end client is going to use which geography? Like how does it
Sure.
sort of work?
So let me step back and touch on something you kind of touched on there. So, as a business, we have scaled through leveraging our expertise in hiring and onboarding and managing team members, but also by having strategic staffing partners, first in Latin America and then in Europe, as we grew. And what that does is takes our team of 30 something and gives us access to a pool of talent over 600 people. So when we run into a specific need that maybe is highly urgent and I need to put together a team in 3 days and we don't have availability on our team, I can lean on that 600 people. It affects our margins, but it allows me to be agile and do some things that I couldn't do otherwise. When we run into a very unique industry need or Salesforce technology need, or maybe a Salesforce adjacent technology need, and we don't have it in house, again, we do the same thing. So it allows us to play much larger than we are. And when you made the comment earlier about having nearshore or having other ISV partners that we're serving, that's how we're doing it. They don't have an expertise of managing distributed teams or recruiting offshore or nearshore, so they come to us and have us help do it. So how do we do that, and how do we choose where? I think first and foremost, it's what's the right person for the skill set that we need. I'm less concerned about time zone and less concerned about culture, only because we've already pre-vetted everybody for culture. And I know this is a long answer, but we take the time in our recruiting process. We don't start anybody junior. We bring in people mid-career and later in their career that have made the mistakes, have the experience, and we can leverage that way. And then we recruit with culture in mind. So I'm less concerned about that. And everybody on our team has worked with American and Western European clients in their lives before. So it's not something foreign to them. So it's first and foremost getting the right team assembled. And then after that, saying, what's the skill set for the problem that we're trying to solve? And then lastly is probably time zone.
Yes.
Because with we serve predominantly North America, a little bit of Europe, a little bit of LATAM, and typically we can at least overlap a third to half of the day.
Yes.
And with that, it gives us enough flexibility to do everything else.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a generic answer, a question, I should say. But
Sure.
you know, in the Philippines, we used to have a rough calculation of what it was an Australian wage versus a
Yeah.
Filipino wage. For you, if you look at onshore versus nearshore versus well, I suppose they're the two key ones. Is there a cost differential these days, or is that getting tighter? Like, what's the situation?
Yeah, there is. And even when I was delivering in a prior life for a company in Australia, and I mentioned I had a team in Melbourne,
Yes,
we did most of our delivery from Asia just because time zone overlap made it a little bit easier. For the United States, it's predominantly LATAM and Central and Western Europe for the same reason. But is there a cost difference? Yeah, there's a cost difference. I'm always very cautious to stress that because I want to sell on value,
yes,
not on cost. As soon as I run into a client that is, and you'll notice I said client, not customer again, back to the whole partner vendor thing. I
yes,
believe words matter, and
yes,
and a customer is transactional, a client is an ongoing relationship. So we want to have clients, and if we're dealing with a prospective client who is 100% focused on cost, it's probably not a good fit for us. That said, we're typically very competitive on cost because our labor rates are going to be half to two-thirds of what they're going to be in the United States. But I'm more concerned with outcomes. You can
yes.
have a person at half the cost that takes twice as much time, and now your rate's the same. So let's focus on the outcomes. Let's focus on what needs to be done. What can we do from a process and an expertise to serve the client and deliver on that outcome? And then let's work backwards from there to what that's going to cost.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same in the US, but I know here in Australia, when we used to do it, it was also the availability, the speed and the availability of
Sure.
people was a lot easier when you're drawing from 120 million pool versus Australia 28. So
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
this is that the same in North America in our industry?
It probably is only because the North American market consumes so many resources.
Yes.
So we need more talent than we have here, even with AI. AI is accelerating everything, and people are worried about AI, giving up jobs. But the reality is, we're just reallocating those people into other adjacent tasks and adjacent needs from a resource planning standpoint. There's still more demand, especially in the technical space, than there is capacity in the United States. So in that way, yeah, the scale's larger than Australia, but I think the problem's similar.
Yeah, great. So, as we said at the start, sort of, 80% is direct client, 20% is, SIs, ISVs, etc.
Yep,
So, if you're, all the details will be in the show notes. So
sure.
if you're an SI looking for those, maybe, sort of high six figure, you're doing a lot of the work yourself. You're looking for us to have someone or a partnership with someone for medium to long term, not a one-off transaction.
Yep.
Certainly reach out to Jim. But if we just go back to the client side for a moment, you say that 40% of implementations don't work. What are some of the biggest reasons you see that those 40% don't work?
Just like anything else, proper planning prevents poor performance. And
Yes.
it's the organizations that rush into things, that don't take the time to plan, that don't take the time to prepare teams and to onboard teams. I have found that taking an extra week on the front end of a project to gather the information to give people more understanding of, here's how we're going to work together. Here's what the outcomes need to be. Here's the key milestones. Here's the definition of done at the end of each milestone. Here's how we measure success. Here's how our SDLC, or whatever you want to call your processes, flows. When everybody is on the same page and singing from the same songbook, it works so much easier. It's when you take a bunch of smart people and you throw them at a problem and you don't agree upon who owns this and who owns that and when done is done here and how this gets handed off and who needs to be involved in certain meetings and what success looks like. So many businesses don't do that.
Yes.
And they end up, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days into something, realizing that everybody's doing out activity, but nobody's producing results.
Yes.
And it's because they didn't take the time at the beginning to plan. I mean, if you were building a house, you talked about doing upgrades to your current house. It's important to understand what are the problems you're trying to solve. How are you going to do that? What does solved mean? And then you start looking at, okay, what are we doing where? And it's the same thing with a software project or a Salesforce project in this case.
Yeah, well, there's no conversation or no podcast you can have at the moment without talking about AI. I know, and I'm sure you've got some, brilliant ways around cost out, but I'm interested, how are you in your business using AI for, generating more revenue?
Sure. So first off, Salesforce is all in AI, like I said earlier. So for part of this, it's identifying with our clients, how are you leveraging Salesforce's newer technologies to do more for your business? And that's generating conversations that are resulting in, new revenue for us,
Yes.
because we're leveraging the platform, then the ecosystem that we're playing in. So I think one side of the equation is that we're partners with Salesforce. Let's evangelize what they're doing, show the benefits of what they're doing, and then generate more revenue that way. The other side of things is we're using AI SDRs and AI BDRs to do outreach and to prospect and to schedule appointments and do things with higher touch, higher frequency, that we just couldn't do with people even a year ago, some of that stuff. So we're leveraging AI that. And then, it's fun to talk about all the revenue producing side, but at the same time, we are as an AI driven organization looking at every different process we have and saying, how can that be accentuated with AI? How can we enhance it with AI so that we can scale the business not with fewer people, but with the same people? How can I take the people that we have now, focus them on their higher value activities, the ones that a machine can't do, by freeing them up from the more tedious things that a machine can do, and grow our business without adding headcount? So we're not looking to cut people. We're just saying, how do we do more with the same, not more with less? And so that indirectly is driving revenue as well. So I think all three of those are core things for us.
Great. And on the sales BDR SDR, is
Yeah.
that within Salesforce? Is it within Salesforce plus an LLM, or is it just an LLM? Just give us a quick
Um,
insight into
for
that.
us right now, it's predominantly with Salesforce. I mean, there's an
Mhm.
element of we're playing in this ecosystem. It's important for us to drink the Kool-Aid. There's also a case where we want to be customer number one. Salesforce talks about being customer number zero.
Yes.
We want to be customer number one. It's a lot easier for us to have a conversation with a client about something that we do ourselves.
Yes.
And so it's important for us to use what we're talking about and say, hey, here we learned on ourselves before we even brought it to market. That said, yeah, we use Claude Cowork every day. We use Claude Code. We're developing tools ourselves to help implement Salesforce technologies with less human touch. We're certainly using AI to aggregate and synthesize information that we're gathering. Like when we have a business analyst sit down and document process, we've got AI note takers tracking everything. Then we're using AI to synthesize the information. So we're again trying to streamline that process. And what we're finding is that the quality of output is increased and the throughput is increased. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, we sort of talked about it at the start of the conversation around, you're doing more strategic things. And I think ultimately an LLM to me is just crunching of information to see what the next pattern is, right?
Yeah,
That's effectively what it is. And I think that's where it's brilliant. Like
yeah,
to take
absolutely.
all of that, crunch it, do something that would take you days in minutes, but then that gives you the ability then to make better decisions. And it was probably, really, it was no different to when we first had some of the SaaS products back in the day. Like, I used business objects back in the day
Yep.
at Coke, where we had so much data, but business objects was the window to help make better decisions. And I think LLMs is in the same vault. But we're going to
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're going to pause for a moment, thank our sponsors, and then we're going to come back to the rapid fire. Quick break. Take the big promise audit. 3 questions, 60 seconds. It tells you whether your positioning is quietly leaking margin every month. If you score 2 or 3, your marketing is costing you more than you think. It's completely free, and you can get it at paulhigginsmentoring.com/audit. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/audit. There'll also be a link in the show notes. Now, back to the show. So, Jim, ready for the rapid fire?
Fire away.
All right. So we talked about Claude and how you're using Claude and Codex, but for you personally, in your role as the business owner, what's an AI that's really impressed you lately?
Yeah, I'm not saying this because we're a Salesforce partner, but Salesforce's Slack bot is
Hmm.
unbelievable. And if you're not familiar with it, it's basically using AI within Slack as the interface and connecting to our Salesforce environment. We're a Google shop, so it's also connecting to our Google Drive and a bunch of other things that we have it connected to. But I can go and let's say, Paul, that you're a prospective client of ours, and we've been in discussions for 6 months and we've had hundreds of emails and 4 meetings or 5 meetings or whatever. I can go to Slackbot and say, I'm meeting with Paul tomorrow, review everything, all of our communication for the last 6 months, tell me what I need to be prepared for, create a list of questions that I should be asking Paul. I can say, if I got an idea about your personality profile, like a disc profile, I can say Paul's a high I, and how does that affect the questions? I can give it, prompt it just like you would ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever, and it will go through all of our data
Yes.
and produce the output. And we're having this conversation with all of our clients because if they're not using it, they should be. It's helping us to generate statements of work and streamline some of our legal process, helping us prepare for sales better. It's helping us prepare for customer service better. So that's the one that I'm super excited about, even though it is a Salesforce product.
Fantastic. Next
Yeah.
one is what's your best go-to-market strategy at the moment?
Best go to market is Salesforce. So for us, we're a Salesforce partner, and I was slow to do this at the beginning. I had some other larger Salesforce partners tell us we need to get in with the Salesforce team, sales team, and get to work closely with them. And we didn't do much of that the first few years. And more recently, we've been leaning in on them, going to every Salesforce event, going to their offices, taking them out to lunch and whatnot, and just getting to learn what they're experiencing and then collaborating more closely with the Salesforce AEs.
Great. Where do you go to learn as the owner of the business?
I'm a Vistage member. So every month, if you're familiar with Vistage, it's a
Yes.
CIO group, and that's part of what I do. In the industry specific, I go to any Salesforce event that's on the East Coast of the US. If it's a big event, I'm there. The big annual event in San Francisco at Dreamforce in the fall, I actually booked flights for earlier today. So for me, it's a combination of trying to expose myself to just how to run a business and what are the problems that other businesses are experiencing, how are they dealing with it, that are independent of us, and combining that with industry knowledge that's specific to what we do, and making sure I'm hearing those case studies and seeing the keynotes and understanding how other Salesforce customers are using the product, because that helps us to understand how to better serve our customers.
Great. And the last question is, what do you know now that you wish you had have known when you first started?
Oh boy. Yeah, so much. I think early on in my career, especially managing nearshore, offshore teams, let alone somebody on the other side of the United States, I think I discounted the fact that everybody doesn't think like me,
Okay.
and having a standard process and taking the time, like I was talking about earlier, to talk through what that process looks like and making sure that they understand what you're thinking and why you're thinking and that you're understanding what they think. I think investing in the people element of any project is critical to its success. Otherwise, you're just getting lucky if you win.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, It's been great to have you on,
Thanks,
Jim.
Paul.
And we'll have all the detail in the show notes, but just it's equals and then it's 11. So 21s.com
Yeah.
is
And
the,
if you want to spell it out, ELEVN, it'll get you there too. But
yeah.
yeah, equals11.com.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Paul.
The key takeaway here is simple. You don't have to carry every delivery hour yourself, and you don't have to hire full time to have capacity. Jim built a vetted bench across 3 continents, and other SIs can use it to bring in a niche Salesforce engineer in days. If you're stuck being the one who does the work or your team are over capacity, that's the constraint we need to fix. Reach out to Jim on LinkedIn and thank him and ask questions. You'll find it on Equals, so that's Equals with 2 1s, or equals11.com. You can watch this episode also on the Paul Higgins Mentoring channel on YouTube. If you love it, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast. That's a wrap for today's conversation. If it landed, the next step is simple. Book a 30-minute call at talkpaul.com. That's talkpaul.com. You talk about where you are now, where you want to be, and what's blocking you or getting in the road. If I can help, we'll go from there. And if you found value in this episode, share it with one other SaaS partner who needs to hear it today. Until next time, goodbye.